In the midst of King David's reign, a time marked by triumphs and challenges, lies a story often overshadowed by the tales of battles and conquests. It is the story of Mephibosheth, a man whose life was shaped by the kindness of a king and the fulfillment of a long-forgotten promise. This is a story of mercy, loyalty, and the unexpected grace that changes everything. To understand Mephibosheth's story, we must first turn back the pages of history. Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan, the beloved friend of King David, and the grandson of King Saul, Israel's first king. As a young child, tragedy struck. When news of Saul and Jonathan's death in battle reached the palace, panic ensued. Mephibosheth's nurse, fearing for his life, fled with the young boy in her arms. In her haste, she stumbled, and the child fell, leaving him crippled in both feet for life. From that day forward, Mephibosheth lived in obscurity, hidden away in Lo-Debar, far from the courts of power. Years passed, and David, now established as king over all Israel, remembered a promise he had made to his dear friend Jonathan. The two had sworn an oath to each other, a covenant of loyalty and love, pledging that they would care for each other's families, no matter what the future held. Moved by this memory, David asked his servants, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Ziba, a servant from Saul's household, was summoned to the king. When he arrived, David asked him, "Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness?" Ziba replied, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in both feet." David's heart was moved, and he immediately ordered that Mephibosheth be brought to him. As the royal summons reached Lo-Debar, Mephibosheth could hardly believe it. The thought of meeting King David must have filled him with trepidation. What could the king want with him, a man crippled and living in obscurity? Was this a call to judgment, or could there be another reason? With no choice but to comply, Mephibosheth was brought before the king. When Mephibosheth arrived, he fell on his face before the king, a gesture of deep respect and fear. He addressed David with the words, "I am your servant." David, however, saw not just the son of Jonathan, but a man who had suffered greatly and undeservedly. "Don't be afraid," David said to him, "for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." Mephibosheth could hardly believe what he was hearing. This act of grace was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Once hidden and forgotten, he was now being restored to a place of honor. He responded in humility, saying, "What is your servant, that you should notice a dead dog like me?" But David had made up his mind. Not only did he restore all of Saul's land to Mephibosheth, but he also appointed Ziba, along with his sons and servants, to work the land and provide for Mephibosheth's household. Yet, despite all this wealth, David's greatest gift was his invitation to Mephibosheth to dine at the king's table as one of his own sons. From that day forward, Mephibosheth ate at the king's table, treated as one of David's own sons. The once forgotten descendant of Saul now found himself in the heart of the king's household. Each day, as he joined David and his family, Mephibosheth was reminded of the kindness that had been shown to him, not because of his own merits, but because of a promise made long ago. Life at the king's table was a blessing beyond measure. For Mephibosheth, It was more than just a place to eat. It was a symbol of the grace that had lifted him from obscurity to honor. The days of fear and isolation were over, replaced by the warmth of belonging and the assurance of the king's favor. Mephibosheth's story is a powerful testament to the enduring nature of kindness and loyalty. Though crippled and forgotten, he was not abandoned. Through David's actions, we see a reflection of God's grace, how he seeks out the lost, restores what is broken, and brings the humble into places of honor. Mephibosheth's life was forever changed by a king who remembered a promise, showing us that true greatness lies not in power or wealth, but in the mercy and love we extend to others.